Hello and welcome to the Analyst Eye, brought to you by the Guinness PRO14. I'm Murray Kinsella of the 42.ie. I'm joined again by Sean Holley of Premier Sports. Well, this is the final episode of our initial run of the Analyst Eye. So firstly, just a quick thanks to everyone for all the lovely feedback. It's been much appreciated. But Sean, Leinster win that Pro14 title in really dominant fashion, unbeaten season. What's impressed you most about them?
Just their level of consistency, Murray. It's hard enough to win one title, let alone three, and on the bounce. It's so impressive. And I think the big question was, could they keep up their form of pre-lockdown? They stuttered just a little. They weren't as imperious, perhaps, but there was enough, and it just showed the strength and depth that they had. I think that's the thing that's impressed me the most, is how efficient they've been in just putting sides away. 3 points conceded in the semi-final, 5 in the final, and without really, burning the sort of track. So, yeah, very impressive and well-deserved, Murray.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to dig into it again in this show. Look at how Leinster pulled off that success, and also touch on a couple of areas, Sean, where they'll be looking to improve in the quarterfinal of the Champions Cup against Saracens.
Yeah, big task, really. Saracens, obviously massive points to prove, not in their domestic competition, but of course now in Europe. They'll want to leave a mark this season in some way or form. No Owen Farrell, of course, but there's a few chinks in the armour that we'll be looking at later in the show.
Yeah, loads to look forward to, and maybe a few bright sparks for Ulster as well after their defeat. But let's start with a look maybe at Leinster's depth. Let's touch on it at open side flanker, because Will Connors went out of the team. Josh van der Flier came back in, and he was named player of the match. It's an embarrassment of riches, really.
Well, one of my favourites has been Will Connors. He's been one of the finds of the season for me, and didn't even make the final starting lineup. Josh van der Flier comes in and then gets named Guinness Player of the Match, Also, we'll look at some of those frailties that you talked about, Murray, that Sarries will be looking at. And one of those areas I feel might just be the line-out. Leinster not quite functioning, lost a few line-outs in the first half, and Ulster maybe look back and rue opportunities to spoil that, because as we know, if they get that possession, they're just so dominant in the 22.
Yeah, let's go back to those flankers, so and just have a little look at Josh van der Flier. I think you've got a couple of clips to look at, but his stats again were impressive. He seemed to lead the line, really. He's completed all his tackles. We can see the number of dominant tackles there as well. Really impressive stuff from a guy who was probably under a bit of pressure to perform, but that's the way it is in this Leinster squad.
They have so many to pick from, don't they? And Connors has been breathing down his neck. 13 out of 13 tackles, 100% record, and 70% of them dominant. It was a neat and tidy performance. I think with Josh van der Flier, there is a point of difference to Will Connors. They're slightly different players. He's very much a hunter-gatherer. He's always around the ball. You can see him, sniffing around the ball. He's in the red hat there. That's not a penalty against him. He's legally over the ball. It's the tackler not rolling away. But he always seems to be in that proximity. He reminds me of a Marty Holler who used to play for the Ospreys. He's always sort of hunting down. You'll see him in the midfield here now. He reads play, he backs away, he makes this tackle, but quickly gets back to his feet. Now, he stays in the fight, Josh van der Flier. He's happy to be a nuisance, a counter-rucker, and over the ball, he's always sort of sniffing that opportunity for a turnover, reads it well, comes from the inside, and even though he gets taken out here, look how he gets back to his feet, and 3 Ulster players have to take him out. This one is a bit of a loose tackle, but it shows that he's capable of coming off the line. I would suggest Connors is a slightly better tackler than van der Flier, probably because he's looking to do this, get back to his feet, counter-ruck, or get over the ball. And there's, again, 3 Ulster players, and that slows the attacking play up. He's not shy of a ball carry too, and also hunting down the ball carrier. Good clean out on the outside clean here, just keeps Leinster's momentum going. And they use him as a +1 in the line-out. Coming up later, I'll show you one of the weaknesses in his game at the line-out, but when he plays a second scrum half, he's excellent. And as I said, not shy of a carry on the pick and go, quite an explosive individual. So it was a nice, neat and tidy game from Josh van der Flier. Timely as well, because the form of Will Connors, as we'll see, has been superb.
Yeah, we'll come to that. But I mean, if you think about Dan Levy still to come back from his long-term injury, Scott Penny, open side flanker, one of the most promising talents in the country, really, and a couple of other guys who could slot into that number 7 shirt. It just points to what Leinster have. Even you look at Ross Byrne coming into the team and delivering an excellent performance. But it'll be fascinating to see this weekend, and I have a feeling Will Connors might be back for the Saracens game after, as you mentioned, his quite remarkable form.
Well, one thing about having all that depth, Murray, is then you're spoiled for choice. So the art of coaching there is around selection in the big games. And to be fair to Leo Cullen, he's done really well with this. You know, we thought about Sexton playing at 10, Rossburn more than capable as he showed. Same in the 7 department. Now, this young man, Will Connors, he's already played 13 appearances. He's made 186 tackles. He doesn't miss many. Look at that, 94%. And he doesn't give too many penalties away because he's different to Josh van der Flier. He doesn't really go hunting for the ball like van der Flier does. You know, he's more of an explosive, hard tackler. His low tackle percentage is phenomenal, and his technique is excellent. He comes from out to in, and this one's from in to out, but his purchase on his shoulder, he comes really high, dips at the last minute, and gets a good shoulder on. His knees almost touch the ground as he comes down. Look how low he gets, chopping standard down here, important tackles, but he quickly gets back in the line. He doesn't do a van der Flier. He doesn't go over the ball or counter ruck. He sees that his strength is being out in that line. Lovely inside shoulder tackle, leg drive, you know, to really push Munster back here. But he's back to his feet, doesn't look necessarily for the ball, is used in the line. He knows his speed and power is used there. Not shy of a shot on the outside. Here we see he grabs the ball, he identifies an opportunity, and he rips it out. Crucial turnover just on the 22 against Munster. You know, added value there. And I really like this fella. It's a cheeky little block here on Conway. Shows he's got a little bit of maturity, a little bit of nous to him. You know, that he's reading the game. And again, back up into the defensive line. And his ball carries. This is a really difficult ball carry under pressure. A little step, but I like his leg drive, money. You know, he's so powerful, and I always presents the ball back nice and clean. You know, we'll see on this next carry as well. Now, nice footwork, difficult outside tackle coming on him, but look at his leg drive. 1, 2, 3 Munster guys, works hard on the floor. He's got to place that straight away. Nice, clean ball, and he can play as well. You know, in the face, takes it to the line, ball back to Sexton, sets Leinster on their way. And in the line out, nice and neat and tidy. Van der Fleer's used at 9. He's a back lifter. Now, I love this. I used to call it do next. He's lifted at the back in the line out. He's come to his next role. He's not used, but he's come all the way off his outside foot to run that sort of decoy block line. Does it superbly well. He's a real one for the future, Will Connors.
Yeah, great analysis, Sean, of a guy who's really emerged in the Pro 14 and been such an integral part of that squad. As we said, the depth has been remarkable. I mean, you've touched on the defensive aspect of his game there, but really with Leinster, this was the dominant aspect of the final against Ulster. They conceded early on that try to James Hume, another real talent, but after that, it was really dominant stuff.
Well, credit to you. James Hume was one of your players to watch, and within 5 minutes, he's bursting through Brian O'Driscoll style to score a phenomenal try in the final. But when we started this concept of Analyst Eye, Marie, you know, we wanted to look at time on feet of players in attack and in particular defence. And you saw something in Leinster. They were at it again in the final. Yeah, Ulster did break them down early on and cause them some problems. But the stats here of time on feet in defence are striking, aren't they?
Yeah, yet again. I mean, the stats actually improved in the final. We spoke about it last week, how impressive this is. You can see it there. Defenders, 15 defenders on feet, 17% of the time. That went up in the final. It was remarkable. And then with 14 men on their feet, another really impressive stat, 59%. That is just remarkable stuff. You're talking 76% of the time where you've got 14 or 15 men on their feet ready to tackle. They made 199. They only missed, 9 tackles in total. And the result of that is that Ulster just couldn't score when they got into the 22. 13% scoring rate. They had issues throughout the restart of rugby, really, in that department, but Leinster just shut them down once they got into that area. 96% completion. Really impressive stuff technically as well. And we're going to look at one passage in particular, just to try and highlight those defenders on feet, that work rate, as well as the ability to dominate tackles when they get into good positions. This one is off an Ulster scrum. Luke McGrath's work on the inside first. He allows everyone to shift one out, and then James Lowe is able to be confident. He closes down Hume and turns him inside for Ringrose, who's back on his feet. Look at him there. He's on the next phase, making the tackle again. And they've got 14 on their feet, ready to go here. Van der Flier with that line speed you mentioned, tackling on the inside shoulder and just shutting down those options and the ability to pass. I just love that work rate, how they bounce off the line. This is really impressive stuff from McGrath. And there's the dominant shot from James Ryan. He brought a real power to proceedings. Again, when Ulster trying to use that quick transfer out of the contact, Leinster are ready. They're aware, so alert. They're already driving them backwards here and gaining meters in defence. It's really spirit-sapping stuff for Leinster, for Ulster rather. There's James Tracy getting out of the line, another couple of meters gained. Andrew Porter with the counter ruck effort. They do like to have a little sniff around it, but they're very selective with it. Low chop tackle from James Ryan there. Again, the variety of technique. And that was actually an opportunity just there for Ulster to maybe move the ball, but they weren't even really looking at this stage. They were just so suffocated by the line speed. There's Van der Flier snaffling Ian Madigan and driving him backwards, again, back on his feet. And Ulster at this stage are really running out of ideas. Toner makes a good tackle. And they're just going to kick the ball away here. There's nowhere to go. They've completely lost that gain line. And that was really the story of this game. They could not make that progress consistently after James Hume's try, obviously, early on in the game. Kick the ball away there, and Leinster get a pretty easy field in the backfield. So really dominant stuff, but it was summing up what we saw all season, Sean. Leinster's defence was clearly their main strength and just deeply impressive.
Yeah, defence wins titles. We spoke about last week, you mentioned Gary Ringrose's work rate in defence. We highlighted it last week, didn't we? And they all complement one another. I think over the course of 19 games through the season, Leinster only conceded an average 13.5 points a game. Well, they only have to score 2 tries a game then, on average. So that just goes to show, and teams are just seeing this blue wall, and it does, it does win you titles. They've been absolutely imperious in that. The penalty count, again, is something that you have to keep an eye on. They've been pretty good, but the breakdown accounts for a lot of those penalties. And they conceded the majority of their penalties in the final after 50 minutes. Do you think Mark McCall and his Saracens team just might look at this area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Leinster concerns are going to be around this area as well as the lineout, which you're going to come back to very soon and have a look at. But Leinster have struggled. It surprised me how they've struggled to get to grips with the interpretations. You've seen a number of not rolling away penalties, and that's often on the back of a dominant tackle where they're almost surprised themselves not to get out of that zone where the scrum half is coming in to try and clear the ball. It's a big issue for them. And Saracens obviously are a team who are extremely disciplined. We know that in big games, often the penalty count and the error count are what decided on those fine margins. And though Leinster are the strong favourites, I have a feeling it's going to be a very close battle. Saracens are going to throw everything at them. So it's obviously ideal for Leinster to have some things to get better at this week, but there are a number of areas I think that Sarries will be eyeing up. And that line out, let's talk about that, because that's a big one for Leinster now after last weekend.
Yeah, it is. And set piece is such a big part of the game in the English game, and particularly the English Premiership. I think they'll have a close look at this. From a Saracens point of view, line out will be somewhere they could target. Leinster only 75% return on their own ball against Ulster in the final. I think they lost 5 out of 10 in the first half. They showed it up a little bit in the second half, but it's the quality of the ball and some of the detail that I would be a little bit worried about if I was Ron McBride and Leo Cullen going into this Saracens game. If you're looking at Leinster, you could possibly target some of that detail in the line out. So, James Ryan came in and he was a little bit rusty. Yeah, we're going to look at some of those examples now. He's coming to the front. It was the first game after a while. He's a missed call. He gets it wrong. He's in the way of Cian Healy, who's going to lift Devon Toner. They get away with that one. Exactly the same here. Ryan's right at the front. They're looking to lift Devon Toner. Healy's looking to lift the big man, and James Ryan's in the way, and they lose that one. So, again, this is in the first half, and into the 22, you'd expect Leinster to be so good. There's a little bit of miscommunication. Josh Van der Flier here now is a bit slow to get on his lift. I don't know if they've got their spacings right. They get too condensed in the front. Van der Flier's late coming in. There's not a lot of room, and that's a poor lift as a result, and they lose what would be crucial ball for them in the 22. And I just think they're a bit slow and lethargic. Here comes Devon Toner. He's looking at the line as he comes in. Doris, does he know the call? He's waiting for Toner. He's leaving it a bit late. It's all a little bit lethargic for me. In it comes. And again, as they come forward, are they getting this spacing right? Doris comes down to this area in the field. Hookers like to throw to areas, pinpoint zones. Maybe Doris should be back a little bit, because that 6 inches makes a difference to that turnover. Again, look how slow Devon Toner and co are coming in. They're trying to eye up where the ball is. Ulster stayed down for most of the game, but Van der Flier is to come in from scrum half here at the front lift. He's too late, too slow. There becomes a poor lift, and you can see Doris stumble as he falls over. Even when Fardy came on and Tracy at hooker, look at Keelan Doris. He's slow getting to the back lift, doesn't catch him. Look how Fardy ends up. They get away with this. But again, Ulster don't compete. These are little details that the line-out coaches, the forward coaches will watch. And I think some of the throws were flat, Murray, as well. So again, Ulster didn't target this. They staying down. They worried about their maul. But look how flat this throw is. They do contest on this one. Toner just gets in front of his man. But if that's at the top of the jump, nobody's getting it at Devon Toner at full stretch. And away they go. Again, look how low that one is. Ulster don't compete on that one. There's opportunities for Saracens. They're going to need to be a little bit more savvy, I think, against the big English side. And when Ulster did finally work it out, I think in the second half, I think Dan McFarlane had a word. They started to contest. Again, look, they really get close to this one. They compete. They could win it. And as well as they do in that line out, there are opportunities. Into the 22, we'll see this one now. Again, Ulster have changed their tactic. They're into the 71st minute. Slow coming in again. Can they read it? They look, they move forward, slow lift at the back, and this time they do get something on it. And Leinster got a bit lucky in the final in this department. There's a bounce up to Devon Toner and they're away. But as we all know, and we've shown on the Analyst Eye, if Leinster do win the ball, they get into the 22, build phases. As we've clipped this one, later phase, their scoring percentage in this area is so good. This leads to Caelan Doris's try, and that really put paid to Ulster in the final. So, I think they've got one of the lowest, I think, in the bottom 3 or 4 of the Guinness Pro14 in lineup percentage, one, which is unusual, and Saracens might just target that area.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. You've shown how it's not just on Ronan Kelleher, because I think a lot of people in the heat of the game go, "Oh, the hooker's not hitting his man." There's several different issues in that. Like, in your experience, is that something that can be fixed in the space of a few days?
Yeah, it can. Like I said, about the hooker will throw to a zone. So you'll see a lot of those throws aren't necessarily the lift goes up and then he throws to the lift. He'll throw to an area and they'll get there and lift to the highest part of the jump. So the line-out coach will want to be hitting the jumper right at the top of the jump to negate the possible contest from Saracens, like I showed there. So it can be fixed. It'll be repetition. It'll be practice. It could be personnel. You never know. I look at Will Connors. Is he quicker and better coming in from scrum half? Is he a better front lifter and somebody else doing that role? All these things will be weighed up in the selection. And of course, they look at how Saracens will defend Murray. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, because Maro Itoje is going to be licking his lips at the thought of going up against a few of those throws. A guy who's really good at disrupting things. But as you said, when Leinster do get that platform, they're so effective off it. In this game, I think they were disappointed with how they actually performed in the 22. It was a reversal, really, of the trend, I suppose. They actually wasted a number of opportunities down in the 22. The example you showed there was a really good one of what they can do when they actually when they nail that set piece. We got a couple of numbers here. This is in attack. Leinster with 12 men on feet. Actually, a little bit less often than Ulster in that sense. There's 11 men on feet. Again, similar-ish stats, but what really went down and what really dropped this week was the scoring percentage from Leinster in the opposition 22, something that we've been rightly lauding the last few weeks. It's been top of the Guinness Pro14 repeatedly, but this week it actually dropped down to 30%. And that is a bit of a concern because we'd seen a few 22 misses over the course of the last few weekends. You can't be perfect every time, but for Leo Cullen and Lancaster, it's going to be frustrating because there's maybe some of those scrappy penalties we discussed in there as well. And again, Sarries, I guess you have to be so clinical, Sean.
Yeah, I think maybe as well, I don't know who the referee is for Saturday, but if it's a French referee, then it's going to be slightly different interpretations around everything again, So, Leinster are going to have to do their homework. They're going to have to be extremely efficient. And, you're right in what you say. They did drop a little bit against Ulster, a few more errors than we're used to seeing. But overall, Murray, they're so good in their efficiency in that 22. They're so good at the scoring percentage, better than anybody else. You feel that, the heightened sort of atmosphere of a big quarterfinal in Europe, they'll bring their big A game to it. And, that was the case in the final from strike plays, from scrum and line-out when they did get good clean ball. They get across that gain line, don't they?
They're brilliant. There's such a nice variety to what they do off set piece. We'll have a look at a few examples from this final. This is off a right-hand side line out and is keyed in the build-up to one of the tries. They set down on the maul initially, don't get a huge amount of headway off it after initial surge. and then the backs call their play. This kind of blocker play we've seen a lot, where Henshaw is the first receiver, Ringrose runs that short line just to tighten up the Ulster midfield. James Hume just slightly biting in there on Ringrose, and that gives the space for Ross Byrne, who also has Keenan supporting him in that instance, but he backs his own pace to get outside. And just a couple of crucial meters, really. Robbie Henshaw has been really dynamic, following up around the corner to gain a few more meters. This is a nice inventive one. There's Josh van der Flier using his passing skills to Gibson Park way out beyond the 15-meter line as the first receiver. A nice tunnel pass. They get the ball to Ringrose now, and they have that threat there. There's Lowry closing up on the outside. He's worried about the passing threat. Ringrose picks out the kick space, that grubber we've seen repeatedly, and we've talked about this kicking game. But then Ulster are left in a really tough position, and that gives Leinster a 5-meter line out, one of the chances they did miss. I love how they use James Lowe on set piece. This is simple stuff, using his acceleration and power in between the Ulster halfbacks to get way over the gain line. He offloads, and then Jordan Larmour's threat on the ball, which you haven't seen a huge amount of in recent weeks, but a nice reminder of how dangerous he is, again, into a brilliant position that they'll have been frustrated to waste. A couple of minutes later, they use Lowe again, but this is a nice little bit of variety. Obviously, Ulster are going to be worried about James Lowe's running threat here. They condense again on him. They're backing off, and he plays out the back. Ross Byrne, really good decision on the ball to delay and then offload to Ringrose, and another really good prime position. So those strike plays, it's simple stuff done very well, and the variety of it, to also include the kicking game in it, Sean, has just been so impressive. In a massive game against Saracens this weekend, I suspect that maybe a couple of those set-piece plays could be really crucial.
I love the way they use James Lowe off that left-hand scrum, and it's a similar shape, on those two plays. I was always one for having, one or two shapes where you got multiple options because you can use them again. And that was a classic example from Leinster. And if you got somebody like Lowe who has the subtle skills to take it to the line and play a different option, then it's very, very difficult to defend. And you're right about the kicking game. I think against Saracens, that's an area I think that they can really apply pressure. If they can force 22 dominance, get into that area, force Saracens to kick out, we know from the stats that they'll prevail in the end. So real exciting one to look forward to. And Ross Byrne, just a quick mention for him, the particularly the Welsh fans who were asking, where's Johnny Sexton? Why isn't he playing? Well, didn't he answer any critics? What a prospect he is, coming in and filling in Johnny's boots. Now, we've talked about Leinster a lot, and rightly so. We make no apologies for that. An unbeaten season, a third Guinness PRO14 title on the bounce. But just a word, Murray, for Ulster, the runners-up, and some positives there. They've got to travel to Toulouse in the European Champions Cup this weekend. We've had some flashy ball players emerge at tighthead in the past, but O'Toole is the nuts and bolts for Ulster. Had a good final. He's been ever present for Ulster with 16 appearances in the Guinness PRO14 this season. He makes his tackles and doesn't give too much away at the scrum, does he?
Yeah, he's been really impressive. A 21-year-old tighthead starting a massive championship final is remarkable in its own right. And he was solid, nothing flashy, as you say. 98.6% tackle completion over the course of the season is really impressive. And he's only conceded 3 scrum penalties. Again, for a young prop, you'd expect that to be higher. I was surprised when we went to look up that earlier on. And I saw Mike Ross on Twitter gave him a good shout out saying his scrummaging has really improved. So that's a real stamp of approval. He's been in an Ireland squad. Andy Farrell is clearly a fan. And I know Dan McFarland really likes his dynamism and his energy and his complete skill set, really. It's exciting to see a guy this young emerge in the Pro 14. And we're going to look at some examples from the final of those unflashy things that he does. This is scrum time. Obviously, this is your bread and butter. Everything comes after this. But he's been really solid. Up against Cian Healy here, a legend of the game, obviously, and gets a nice shunt on just before Leinster play the ball away. I like the backup effort then. He's back on his feet, obviously tired after that scrum effort, but he makes an impact in this tackle here with Alan O'Connor. Again, it's Healy. The pair of them with a dominant tackle behind the gain line for Ulster, and then he's back on his feet slowly but surely and making that third effort again just to make things scrappy for Leinster. Doesn't manage to greatly impact it, but even that work rate and effort is impressive. As we said, almost 99% tackle completion rate, and this is against Edinburgh, making another dominant tackle to lead up the line. Carrying wise, this is somewhere he'll hope to continue to improve with his footwork, but he has that raw power, I guess, for a young guy getting over the gain line. 88% of the time with his carries in this Pro 14 final. He's also comfortable out in slightly wider channels, as you see here. Eric O'Sullivan with the little tip on, and O'Toole has held the width, making yards. His tip on passes himself actually have been impressive as well, and he plays a link at the back to Billy Burns in this instance against Edinburgh. Sets up the crossfield kick. Not a great one from Burns, but that handling ability from Tom O'Toole is impressive. And then just the awareness here, he's been skipped here, but gets to break down, wants the quick ball, that tempo we spoke about from Ulster. They always want to play and keep the ball alive as much as possible, and then back on his feet to offer himself up for an inside carry, the tip-in pass. Again, that interplay is something Ulster do particularly well. But in terms of bright sparks, you had a couple of good performances. You mentioned Sean Reedy. I know during the week he was excellent, but to have a 21-year-old tighthead doing so well in a big final is impressive. What about Dan McFarlane's review, Sean? Because I spoke to him during the week and he said it took him 48 hours to grieve this. He kind of had to go through the catharsis of it all. But there is a huge match on the horizon. How do you think they can look back on this Pro 14 campaign overall, getting back into a final for the first time in years?
Well, I think, if the Guinness Pro 14 had gone on another 3 or 4 weeks, Ulster would be thereabouts. They've sort of been developing their game. And even before lockdown, I think it was only them and the Scarlets, that had scored more tries from transition play, turnover ball or kick receipt. So we saw in the second half against Edinburgh, when they upped the passes, upped the tempo, got into the wider channels and made some offloads, they posed Edinburgh, who've been one of the teams of the season, a huge amount of threats. So they should go with a lot of confidence to Toulouse. They got nothing to lose, excuse the pun. But, when you've got players like O'Sullivan, you mentioned another one, they've got young players who really will benefit from the experience. They will need people like Henderson, Coetzee, Burns, McCloskey, firing, Stockdale. And if those guys fire, then the young kids will sort of feed off that. I don't think Dan McFarlane should beat himself up too much. They've lost against a side that is the best side and has been the best side all year. It's huge depth, as we keep talking about. And they've done really well to get to a final. I think they should take an overall snapshot of their curve, which is going upwards perhaps, and go out there and put all the positives into the performance. Because, I've looked at Toulouse the last couple of weeks, and it's been a pretty turgid top 14 restart, Murray, and if they can play a high tempo game, then who's to say they can't go out there and cause an upset?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a thrilling game. Two sides who love to attack. Go on, let's hear your predictions. So the Pro 14 sides are back in Europe. How do you think it's going to go for the two of them?
I think... why not? I'm going to go, Leinster to win. If you're a betting man, the bookies are giving Saracens an 8-point start. That'll tell you something. When did that happen last? So, Leinster to win comfortably against Saracens for me, and Ulster to win in a barbarian-style 42-38 victory in France. I'm going for it. Why not?
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. Listen, we're out of time, Sean, and that's actually it for our initial 4-week run of the Analyst Eye. It's been good fun, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been great, man. A great concept. Huge thanks should go to Adam Redman, our producer, and to Paul Larton and his team, who've done all of the stats and analysis. We've been clipping away, mate, but they put all the bells and whistles on for us, and it makes our job that much easier. But I've enjoyed working with you, mate, and let's hope that we can continue this in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you've liked the show, please let us know and tell us what you want to see more of in particular. It has been great to have the Pro 14 back, the Guinness Pro 14 back in action, and Leinster winning that title. So a big thanks to Sean, also to Adam and Paul for all that hard work. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.